Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm in Westfield, New Jersey again, and we're going to be installing two overhead garage door opener receptacles. So a lot of times in houses, especially older houses where the garage doors, the garage door opener was added later on, a lot of times people use extension cords. All right, so what my plan is to get rid of this extension cord, which goes up to the garage door opener already. What I plan to do is take this receptacle out, obviously unplug this cord. We're going to reuse the source right here for the two new garage door opener receptacles. And we're going to come out of the top right here. We're going to come up to where it meets the ceiling. Then we're going to hit a 90 right there. And then another 90 to come along this path to get to where the garage door opener is, which is right there. All right, and so what I want to do is I want to put my receptacle almost just to the left of where the garage door opener is here. And that area is going to be right here. And then what we'll do, since it's wide open, we'll go across the ceiling again and put it almost in the same exact area as the first receptacle. So if you didn't have a garage door opener receptacle here already, or an opener, okay, the way you would figure out where to put that receptacle box is to measure the height of the door, okay? Obviously the height of the door is right there, alrighty? And this door is open, so you see where it opens to, all right? But then it has this arm, and the garage door opener installers can tell me what that arm is right there. This is all coming out and a new one's going in, but you can see the opening and how far away the garage door opener is from the actual garage door. So it's usually, we measure about 2 feet. So you take the height of your garage door and add 2 feet, and that's where your receptacle is going to be. And I also don't like to center them if I can help it, because if you center them, then you might be in the way of the actual rail up here. Just stay away, just off to the side right here, which is where we're going to put our receptacles. So the heat wave here was finally over, and it was a lot of days at 90 plus degrees temperatures, and this day it was in the mid 70s. But I come across some short conductors here, and let me show you how I approach that. Look how small these wires, short these wires are. What the fuck? Jesus, I can't even get in there. All right, so let's see where this goes. So I believe this goes down into the basement. I put this receptacle in for the garage, for the refrigerator some time back. And so there should be a wire that I could see coming into the ridge. This is the ceiling in the basement, which I'll show you in a second. And so this is probably coming through the same place. Wherever there's new wires, I think it's a 20 amp circuit, obviously, for the garage refrigerator here. All right, so this is probably in the same height. So I'm gonna try to find this wire and disconnect it and extend it from the junction box where it's coming from in the basement. Okay, so there's my 20 amp wire going to the new receptacle, and there's my short wire that we're going to reuse for the garage door circuit. And as you can see, it goes all the way back to this junction box. All right, so what we'll do is we'll disconnect this, we'll run a new wire over there to it, and away we go. So disconnecting these wires does not need to be hard. What I like to do is just cut off the wire that I'm pulling out of the box and make a short piece around the splice, take the wire nut off, and undo that short piece from the splice, and then I'm home free. Okay, so bending conduit and installing conduit does not have to be difficult. What we're looking to do is get this done as quickly as possible and get this done in a workmanlike manner. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to knock out this back KO seal, and then we'll install a plastic connector here if I have one. I might not have one, so we'll use a regular single Romex connector. Now this weekend when I was down with the IEC in the instructors conference, they had a demo lab set up where it had 2 NM cables going through this single connector. I've always understood that this single connector is 1 Romex wire, non-metallic sheath cable. Just 1. If you put 2 in there, no good. So what we need to do next is we need to make sure that the opening in the sheetrock is going to be big enough to fit this and be able to get 2 anchors to secure this to the wall. Make sure this hole needs to be 1.25 inches to be able to fit this single Romex connector. I remember putting in disconnects for AC systems all the time. Yeah, see that? Now it's nice and flush in there. Alrighty. So now what we'll do is we'll tighten down the set screws on the connector, and then we'll get the level. We'll make sure this is level before we mark where the anchors are going to go. All right, this is pretty important to get this one right because you're going to start this whole run out of this box. You want to make sure that this box is secure. And generally, I like to get these screws started and in place before tightening them down so we can get it nice and level. Ready to start our conduit run. We'll come out of the top here, come up, we'll 90, and then we'll 90 again to where we want to go up here on the ceiling. So when they teach you EMT in the schools, they're going to teach you all about doing geometry and take up, and when you make these bends, you lose the shrinkage of the conduit. There's a whole formula for doing that, which is great, and that's, don't get me wrong, that's important. But I'm working with 1/2 inch EMT, and when I work with 1/2 inch EMT, I mostly eyeball it, maybe a couple pencil marks, and I come back and I trim it with the bandsaw. All right, so I'm gonna measure my height to the ceiling, and for argument's sake, we're gonna call it 39.5, all righty? Maybe I'll call it 40, and what I wanna do is I wanna start making my bend. Well, I should say this, when you start making the 90-degree turn right here, all right, with 1/2 inch EMT, it's gonna take up 5 inches to do that. So what we wanna do is we wanna take 5 inches off that measurement before we make our bend. We're gonna call it 40 right here. So I still gotta make my box offset and the 90, and then we're gonna make another 90 right here to go that way. We're gonna mark this at 35 inches since there's a 5-inch take up when you bend this conduit. So I'm gonna start a bend right here. Do my box offset first. And the box offset means that this edge of this conduit here and where the box KO is, where the connector is going to be, is approximately like a 1/2 inch. So we just want to do a little kick on there first because it'll be difficult to do it after we do our 90-degree turns. So now I don't measure for the box offset. I haven't for years. I mostly work with 1/2 inch and maybe 3/4 inch EMT once in a while. So I do this just by eye, and you'll see here, just small little kick there. You want to make sure that when you bend it, everything's straight and lined up, so you have you don't have what's known as a dog leg. All right. Now that I didn't even measure, okay, which most electricians probably don't. But as you can see right there, there's just that little offset. And that's what's going to go into the box. That when I bend this on this mark, that this is going to line up with my connector in the box. All right. So now you could lay this on the ground. It's going to be easier to bend it like this, standing up here. All right. And you just eyeball it here, so you don't have a dog leg. All right. And then bend to 90 degrees. Now I'll turn it over and lay it down. Okay, and then continue my bend. Let's go see how we did. So one of our problems here is this is going to be bending this way pretty soon here. But I want to check that my bend up to the ceiling here is good. And I think we are just about perfect here. I'm using the bender here as a straight edge to try to get an accurate measurement. So I'll put my tape measure up against the bender. All right. What do we say, 27 inches? All right, so there's our measurement. Do 27.25 just for kicks. Now we're gonna kick. See how we did here. I would say that's pretty damn good right there. So what I wound up using were those zippets to attach a couple of straps here. And then of course there's a strap where the wall meets the ceiling, and we know that there's a top plate there. And so we just use that framing behind it to attach our screw. But here on the open wall right here, we got to use some kind of anchor of some sort, and that's why I wound up using those zippets. And of course we want to make sure that it's plumb and looks good. So with half-inch EMT, you got to have your first strap within 12 inches of it leaving the box. I'm sorry, within 3 feet of it leaving the box. So in my opinion, it's okay to have extra straps here. I got one at the bottom, one at the top, and that piece of conduit's not going in. And then of course one right here on the top plate. Getting the run started is usually the most difficult part of this job. And now we're over it. So I think what I want to do next to make sure that this run is nice and straight is to get my laser level out so it's nice and neat. So the laser level is nice to make sure that your work looks presentable. I didn't use any tape measure, didn't measure anything, but I set up the laser level so that as I'm installing the conduit, it looks straight going across the ceiling, and the boxes line up in the same places where the garage door openers are going to plug into. Then I use my stud finder to figure out where I'm going to mount my box, and I drive a screw to make sure there's actually a joist there. And basically we took care of the measurement from this line, which is where the edge of the box is, where the box is going to go, okay? And we took a measurement from there to the end of this conduit run where we'll put a coupling, and then we'll attach the box. But right now we are ready to cut our conduit. So I think we said 48.25. So here's 48, here's a quarter. A little kick, boom, just a little bit of pressure, and just a little bit away from the last bend, and boom, you have a box offset. Here's a pro tip. You see the screwdriver there? It's underneath the piece of EMT, so I can wedge it down just enough so I can slide that coupling on before trying to tighten it left-handed here, which obviously I'm not very good at, but I eventually get it. You want to make sure all of your mechanical couplings are attached properly. Use a stud finder to find out exactly where that joist is. Make sure there's a joist there, and then mark it. So here I just want to get a measurement again to this line. It's approximately 98 inches. I'm good with 98 inches. One thing you always want to do too is you want to burr the ends here. And that's so when you pull the conductors through, you don't nick the insulation. All right, so we need box offsets on either end of this conduit. And then I just need to mark where my straps are going to go. So that'll help support this piece while I'm installing it. So there's my box offsets, right? But then over here you'll see this is like a rolling offset because the offset was a little bit too strong. All right, so I just rolled it. And like I was just saying, I'm not sure if that's because I made too big of a box offset or the ceiling here might be dipping just a little bit. I don't know. It's maybe a combination of the two. But all we did was just roll the offset to the one side. See how it's got a little dog leg there? Not that big a deal. Obviously, got good installation too. You ready? Here's your box offset. Boom. Doke. Now this first strap's supposed to be within the first 3 feet. I drilled it. I attached it here while I was putting the conduit in to support it because it needs to be supported. It'll fall down. Now the set screw's tight, and we're ready to begin pulling conductors. Now, I probably didn't need to run the fish tape through the conduit here. I probably could have just pushed these 3 conductors, but I had to tape out, and that's how I did it. And so I usually just attach one piece of THHN. It's all number 12 conductor here around the loop, and then I just tape on the 2 other conductors. So I have a black, I have a hot, I have a neutral, and a ground. All right, and then you'll see inside each of the boxes, I just attached my ground wire to the green screw inside the box so that it is permanently bonded. Does not need to be bonded to the actual receptacle, although that's a good practice as well, but I did not do that here. Now, one of the first steps here in putting these receptacles on these 4-inch square plates is to knock off the ears on this duplex receptacle. It's tamper resistant. It's a non-GFCI because we're going to GFCI protect the circuit supplying power to the receptacle here. All right, now I always like to reuse those long screws because I got these big beefy fingers, and when you go to put the receptacle in, they only give you these short screws, and I could barely fit my finger in there to hold the nut. So the longer the screw, the easier the nut will go on to hold it. And the nuts are required to hold this receptacle in place to the plate. This was an update many, many years ago. So the way I start this is I get one of these small screws here. Alrighty. And we'll just hold it to the plate, just like that. Ready? Then I take the screw that I took out of the receptacle and stick it in there. See how much more room I have there now to get my nut to get onto there. And then once that nut is on there, I'll use my finger to hold it in place while I drive the bolt home. All right, nice and tight. Now, when you're working with THHN, some receptacles you could have a pressure plate and you could just strip your THHN and use that pressure plate and call it a day. But I have these basic tamper resistant duplex receptacles that I use, and so when I'm terminating with THHN, I put on what's known as a stake, a fork. I crimp it on there, and the hot and grounds are done. I'm sorry, the hot and neutrals are done to the device, and of course the ground gets attached to the ground screw inside the box. Make sure we have a safe equipment grounding conductor connection. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do pigtails. Alrighty. pigtail this ground with a loop. That'll be connected to my box. All right, now even though this is EMT and we could mechanically attach all the pieces together to form our equipment grounding conductor, I'd prefer to just run an insulated green equipment grounding conductor in addition to the mechanical conductor that's made by the EMT. The final step here was to install this GFCI receptacle, and so the line side is your supply, and the load side is whatever the electrical load is, and in this case it's the two receptacles we just mounted on the ceiling. So both of those garage door opener receptacles are GFCI protected. So that box that you just saw, that new Romex, this is a new Romex where I connected it in the basement, black to black, hot to hot, ground to ground. And this is the same circuit that the previous receptacle was connected to. So we'll break for lunch and we'll come back down here and put this, put a blank plate on this. Everything's energized now, and I'm quite certain that everything's going to work. But we'll go upstairs and test it before we break for lunch. All right, so this has a built-in tester on it. Obviously the green means we're wired correctly. We got 118 volts. My M18 boom light, the battery's going dead, that's why it's flashing like it is. All right, so we just hit the test button here. Boom, it resets. I'm sorry, it trips. You reset it. Now with this test, I just gotta wait for this green light to stop flashing. Then once it does, I'll check the top half. That's good. We'll reset it. Alrighty, so we plug this in. Obviously we got the green light, we're good. All right, we'll hit the test button, and the GFCI we just put in over there should trip. And it does. If you got anything useful out of this video, do me a favor, hit that like button. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos, and hit that notification bell.